Imagine sitting across from a doctor, describing everything that you've been told is menopause. The hot flushes, the rage, the sleepless nights, the brain fog. And he stops you and he asks, this word that you keep using, what is it? He has never heard of it because in the tradition that he has trained, menopause doesn't exist. They're just symptoms and every one of them he treats at any age. Obviously, in modern society, the word is more common now, but that's one of the stories my guest told me and it's really stuck with me. Shreejan Sita was a project manager in publishing in New York City until she wasn't. In 2013, she moved to an ashram in the Thar Desert in Rajasthan, India, to study yoga, Ayurveda, and traditional healing in the lineage of the Siddha yogis. She is now a PhD scholar in integrative medicine, a certified yoga therapist, and the founder of Utsava Maa, an annual celebration of the Great Mother, and brings together hundreds of women together through ceremony, ritual, community. And she's also just released her third book with her guru, Yogecology, Spirit in the Soil, making the case for a return to nature-based healing. And today we are speaking about everything that sits underneath that story. What women lose when they disconnect themselves from the natural world, why ritual and collective gathering do something individual wellness practices can't even touch, and why she believes that the years that we're taught to fear, the crone and menopausal years, are actually the most powerful seat a woman can hold. Srijan, welcome to Her Daily Rhythm.
I was raised by a Celtic family who my grandmother claims that she's the descendant of a Druid priestess who was responsible. The Aryans brought the Vedas into India. So these tree worshippers of Ireland is very much a part of my background. I grew up in a family that valued trees and knew that, you know, the world speaks to you through this creator, but only if you're climbing the tree, kind of messages I got from my grandmother. So when I arrived at this ashram, I just never had heard of the word ashram. I didn't know what it meant. And I met the spiritual leader there. And I knew it didn't look like other ashrams we had been in, like temples. They had a lot of avatars and images and mythology and things in those other temples. But this ashram didn't have any of that. It just had a lot of green and a lot of trees. And I met with the guru there, and he taught us that this was the ashram. He was the tree planter, and that the spiritual lineage of this place came from Gorakhnath, father of Hatha Yoga, and went down through in its eco-spiritual environment where there are no avatars and no religion. And I just took a great deal of solace in that, because in the United States, we have sort of this faith-based, belief-based animosity between people that just did not exist there. People were engaged in protecting and the stewardship of nature, which is heavily leaning toward planting trees. So while I was there during the first few years, I came out of New York as a project manager with a publishing company. So you can imagine, I have a process, you make the plan, you work the plan. And then I encounter India.
And all of its vibrancy.
It's vibrant, but they have no plan. You know, they have no real processes that are replicable. These people relied entirely on the animation of nature to inform them what's next. And nature, not just, you know, the season and the time and the transitions of the day, but also the nature of the body itself and nature working through the body itself. And so it took about 2 years for me to sort of get out of that, you know, New York City kind of project manager mind and move into more of a what might happen today. And I remember that the day that I landed on the, you know, the Indian side of that fence was I was building a girls' camp where we were bringing in a lot of unmarried girls to get them ready for, you know, expression, you know, use their voice, find good work, learn how to study, learn how to use the mind, learn team work, learn problem solving, learn basic hygiene, things like this. And there was a lot of things not happening the way I had planned them. So I met with the guru, and he's very earth-based. He sits a lot, he meditates a lot, he's with nature a lot. And then he comes out at the end of the day knowing exactly what to do, and he'll pick up the phone and magic happens. And I'm seeing this and I'm thinking, wow, I don't have that magic. But at one point, something was going very wrong with the teachers in the school. And I said to Guruji, I said, things might go better with this project if you get off the couch. And I was very, very direct with him, very much more direct than probably other disciples. And I'm sure his brothers shuddered the way I spoke to him. But he looked at me and he said, Srijan, things will happen the way they're supposed to happen if you sit down on the couch. And that lesson, he's very earthbound, I'm more wind-based, so that lesson for me has really facilitated all of my decision making going forward, so that it's not an intellectual plan that I'm building, but mostly sticking with the rhythm of nature, which includes putting people in the team, inviting and attracting people to my team that should be there and want to be there. And voila, the team is mixed, an even mix of earth and fire and wind-based people, and then magic happens. But only if I was able to step back and leave my ego, sitting with the trees and not try to plan so much and manage so much. Planning and management are two words that they find quite offensive, because it means that you're moving away from what nature had designed for you anyway, or the cosmos. So that's how that whole thing happened as far as me getting there, and up to about 2 years into my 7-year stay, I was kind of fully engulfed in this. And there was instinct for me to shift back into the project manager and get these things built and running. And I did build a lot of things while I was there, and they were appreciative of that. But then having to make an even balance so that nature can do the bigger work. People's planning and ego is a very small part of what happens in the world. Nature is really in charge, as we know. We see that all the time. And so that your questions about today were poignant in that. Did I answer the first question?
Yeah, oh yeah, absolutely. It's so many different things actually, and I'm really great at like going like this, like nature, but then all coming back. And I think I really loved, firstly, how you speak about following the yeses. And I'm wondering, when you started following the yeses in 2013, were you maybe going through your own hormonal shifts into menopause?
Well, in 2007, when my world kind of fell apart, until I actually moved there full time in 2013. So I would have been 48 at that point. I was still menstruating. I was still, I didn't stop menstruation until I was 51. So probably 3 years into my stay there, things kind of hormonally started to really shift for me. But an interesting story about the concept around menopause, and this is no offense to you and your work, or anyone who is working on this. Hormones are, they format all of your thinking and decisions, and they animate your body and all organs and all tissues. So super important to do hormonal balancing work every day, but not just when you're 45. From early, maiden and mother and goddess phases, all three phases that precede Crone, your hormones, we need to be very sure. And right now we're in a world where there's a whole lot of stuff working against you having healthy hormones for whatever reason. But between the pollution and the poisons in the food and the radiation all over our homes, our hormones are the softest tissue in the body and are being regulated by features that humans have built. So if you want to regulate hormones, again, you have to remove yourself from man-made structures, human-made structures and activities, including buildings and radiation. And even the Aztecs knew that cooking outside was the healthiest thing you can do for female hormones, because cooking under the sun provides a kind of power and energy to the food that can't be received inside a kitchen. So I could give you a list of 100 things that each of these phases of women should be doing to regulate their hormones. But the story is this: when I was staying there in 2016, my friend from Finland came, and her life had also kind of blown up, and she was entering the next phase. And she says, I'm fully menopausal and I'm struggling. I cry all the time. I'm angry all the time. I'm hungry all the time, and I starve myself all the time, and not sleeping. And she said, in the hot sweats, and it's just textbook menopause. So I said, I'm not having any symptoms, but I feel for you. Let's take you to the doctor. We took her to the Ayurveda doctor, and he looked at her and said, this M word that you keep using, what is it called? And she said, menopause. And she spelled it for him, and he said, Meno, pause. And he said, okay, what does it feel like? So she described all of the hormones, all the imbalances that were being caused by what she said was an imbalance. She defined it as an imbalance in her hormones. And he said, this is not what you call menopause. These are all separate symptoms. We can treat you for that. But he said, this menopause thing, this is an American phenomenon. This doesn't exist here in India. And she was gobsmacked. She said, it doesn't exist anywhere in the world. And he said, well, let's just take your one symptom, hot flash. She said, yeah, sure. Some women have hot flash when their hormones are out of balance, when we can correct that. Insomnia, that's a separate symptom. We can correct that. Crying all the time. We can talk about that and we can correct that. So all of them, he said, are not specific to women in their 50s and 60s. He treats women with those symptoms in their 20s or in their 90s. It's just a body of symptoms that a pharmaceutical company named, very inventive, menopause. But it's never mentioned in any of the textbooks. It's not taught in other indigenous cultures. It doesn't exist, for the Aboriginals. This is an American definition that came from a pharmaceutical company. So at that time, what was going on in my life that probably was causing symptoms of fight or flight, move to the other side of the planet, was the barn was burning down. I had really just a whole nest of loss to deal with. And absolutely that changed my everything, my hormones, the way I was thinking. I had my first sleepless night and I thought, oh my gosh, what's happening? I wasn't hungry anymore. I was losing a lot of weight. So things in our life changes the way our hormones react. We know just from studying asana that different asana changes how much testosterone flows through your blood or how much glucose is flushed from the blood. Can be changed with simple meditation, pranayama, bandha, definitely, and asana. So if we know that to be true, and we know a 55-year-old woman is having hot flashes, why wouldn't we approach her and say, what's going on in your life? What's happening? What we know about menopause and women who are having it at the same age is they're all going through the same changes, the same timeline, and the same things are happening with loss, change of job, taking on more leadership at the office, husband is retired, finances are now, a big responsibility, preparing for retirement. And all of a sudden, she has different kind of stress, a different pace of lifestyle, and then she starts medicating. We also know that ice water is horribly destructive to the thyroid and the endocrine system. And the minute you stop drinking so much ice water, the thyroid heals itself and stops with the hot flashes. So I don't treat with this menopause in my clinic here or in India at Sri Devi Wellness Center, but we do deal with all of those symptoms. I currently am treating someone who's 28 who she says has perimenopausal symptoms, loss of period and hot flashes and all these things. So she's not perimenopausal. She's 28.
No. Yeah, it's really interesting, the rhetoric, because the media around us is targeting women in their 30s with perimenopause. And I guess the main reason I ask that is because I do speak to women in their 40s or 50s who are scared of that wisdom era, right? And they lose their courage. They lose their ability to adapt and be malleable and follow their internal rhythms and realize that they are a part of nature because, as you say, they've been living in these nuclear families under fluorescent lighting, everything that takes us apart from our true nature. So if you're not able to witness how life grows, how you grow vegetables, how you grow fruit, how you feed the soil with water, sunlight, etc., how can you trust in your own self? So I want to go back to what you say, that I think we're called to go through, the universe invites us into this transformation and into this transition and this place to say yes. But a lot of women lose their confidence based on the external narratives around us, but it is that beautiful opportunity to come in and create this beautiful life that you've created in India.
Yeah, and I think what's missing is probably the North Star, that thing that's going to draw them toward their future as a mother. They're like, I have several clients who are in their maiden phases, not yet a mother, and they're saying, I'm terrified of getting older because not only am I going to be ugly and my body's going to be wrecked, but I'm also going to have all these symptoms. And I said, no, not at all. You don't have to do that. So the time to talk to women about this topic is actually when they start menstruating, because that's really their opportunity to set them up for a wonderful mother, queen, and crone phase, is to tone and refine the system of hormone development and circulation. It's really in the early 20s up to 30 that we have the opportunity to make that all happen. But then something in the back of their mind says, what for? What for? If I'm going to be married and I'm going to be responsible for everything that happens in my house, as well as all the consequences, I'm going to be running the place by myself with kids and a husband who's dependent on me. In the 1940s and 50s, homes were communal. Everybody had a role. I'm not saying child labor is a good thing, but children need to have a job. They need to have a role and a purpose. Otherwise, there's no purpose, and they can self-medicate and go and do gaming and destroy the world. Same with women. What do I have to look forward to as a crone? What is it? We have ageism in the United States that says you're useless, right? After you have fulfilled your motherhood, you're useless. We see the same thing happening in India with arranged marriages. If they have a boy straight out of the gate when they're 21, their job on the planet is done. They're useless. They have no role. So the North Star I'm talking about is, in history, in all indigenous cultures and in many cultures today, women are preparing to take on the crown of queen, the third phase, when they're really running the kingdom. But they have a lot of support. They're not also changing the oil on the car and doing all the laundry and cooking 21 meals a week because they're the queen. They have people to do that so that they can, what, run the PTA or become the mayor or do something that brings their wisdom forward. And after she's done all that, now is the crone crown. You get to retire to your small house, your small cave. You get to receive visitors who ask questions. You get to teach meditation and pranayama. You get to teach the healing wisdom of plants. There is no big wardrobe. There is no big house. You've given that to your daughters. And you have a granny shack. This is a phenomenon that happens in many, many cultures. There's one in Uzbekistan where the women who reach crone phase are given a free home. It's a hut. It's really a very small 250 square foot hut with a half door, so that if someone comes to ask her for guidance, like a couple, they knock on the door, she opens the top, she gives them counseling, they give her a bag of rice, and then they go home. And she lives a very simple, she's not poor, she's fed, she's clothed, every wood's delivered. She lives a very simple life, but separate, because she's crone. She is the oracle. She is the guide and the priestess. And it is a position of leadership. Nothing happens in that village until the crones say that it's a good thing. And this was ancient culture. They're going back to the way it always was, where women gathered in cave during the time of menstruation. And some patriarchal lineages and a lot of anthropologists in the 70s used to say because the men kicked them out because they were dirty. And the red tent also, from the Israeli traditions. But actually what was happening in the caves and in the red tents and in modern history in the salons of Paris is women would come together to talk about important things, like politics, to make things go right, about disputes in the community, or should the community be dissolved and moved inland. And so and we'll talk about ways that we can change and get back to the nature. So my belief is very firm, and we do a lot of teaching to younger children, 5 pillars of health, and move them into proper stewardship of themselves and nature. But it starts pretty young, at age 9. By the time the girls start bleeding, they have to understand that the physiology of their body, what the uterus is for, because the school's going to teach them it's for having children, but we're going to teach them it's for making progesterone. We're going to teach them what the ovaries are there for. It's not just for making eggs. It's part of your health. If you have healthy reproductive organs, you will live a very long and healthy life. So the teaching of these things happens quite young.
And are you noticing in young girls that they're who follow these nature-based practices that they're menstruating earlier, like we're witnessing in the West, that girls at 8 years old are starting their menstruation?
No, not in India.
No.
They're starting on time at 13, but here in the United States, again, they're putting estrogen and chemicals in store-bought milk that decreases the age at which they start. It's also changing men's bodies.
Mm-hmm.
Estrogen is also disrupted from things like packaged foods, the cellophane that
Mm.
you buy from the gas station or whatever, pollution, pesticides, Roundup, Ready Roundup, all of that changes our hormones, and it's forcing girls in the United States to start earlier and earlier, or the opposite, never start. I have
Mm.
more infertility cases here in the clinic and in the ashram clinic than ever before. The number of infertile men and women is skyrocketing because of the problems.
Based on our disconnection with nature and respect and honoring of the stewardship. I think that leads really nicely to Utsava Maa, your celebration of the Great Ma, because you spoke of these rites of passages, which we've lost our connection and our passages to the seasons and to birth and to grief and things like that. We do everything so isolated and alone. So I wonder if you can explain to us about this beautiful movement you've created.
Yeah. Well, when I first started it in 2017 was our first one. I proposed it to Guruji because there was a lot of festivals that were made and hosted by men that were based on ceremony. We see ceremony as sort of a replacement for nature. So instead of going to the trees and doing your work with the trees, meditation, pranayama, whatever, you can instead go to a temple, offer some money, do a ritual, and you're done. You've done your penance, you've made your agreements, and you can go to work. So you're going from one temple building to your office building to your car to, they're actually cutting down forests and mining for the stones and killing the forest to make the temple. So the irony
Okay.
for these people in the ashram was obvious, but not seen by other people. They really didn't understand why digging up a wild prairie that was full of animals and plants that were making water and oxygen and putting on a factory farmed product like soybeans. Monsanto is now in India. They didn't see the problem with putting Monsanto seed on that field, which
Mm.
killed the soil in just a few seasons. And now the
Mm.
field is feral. And the people around
Wow.
it don't have the water. They can't use the field to grow actual vegetables. One of the questions that Guruji asked a crowd of 1,100 was, can you define wild lands for me? And we teach mostly farmers and their families, and they all raised their hands and said it's a farm. So they didn't understand the difference in qualities and values that a farm brought and a wild prairie brought. So that's the
Mm.
majority of our work had to do with teaching them that the wildlands was necessary for their children's health.
Mm.
And keeping the Monsanto seed out of their farms was important for their children's health. So we
Mm.
started traveling from village to village up near Pakistan in the Thar Desert and going from one village to the next for a week each and bringing the yoga back to the people because, as you know, India was colonized and the
Mm.
language and the spirituality, the communal living, the yoga, all of it was taken, it was destroyed. So we're bringing that back to the people. And in the conversation, we're saying yoga returns your body to its nature, and
Mm.
returning your farmlands to natural is the same thing, but on the outside, as above, so below. And
Mm.
slowly over time, the farmers would revert back to self-sustained farm practices, which did not use chemicals. And from that came our book, the Yogecology book, which is a story about us traveling village to village. And I'm in there having dialogues with him. And so you're watching the process of me understanding what yoga is, why it was given to us. We don't know when, so long ago, and how it's useful for us and for the environment. So Yogecology was an outcropping of that. So after a few years of that, 2013, 14, and 15, I suggested to him, why don't we have like a composite experience of what we're doing, but inside the red tent, and for the women who operate the family homes. In India, when you enter a stranger's home, and they invite you in, the tradition is generally to go in and greet first the oldest woman in the home, to touch her feet, which is asking for permission. And if she puts her hands on your head, then you have permission to enter her home and speak to her family. But without that, she's in charge. Without her permission, you can't come in. So I said, if the grandmothers are in charge, and subsequently their daughters are in charge, they own the home, and the men own the farm, why don't we have all these women in from many continents to come together inside a big red tent and start learning from female ecologists and female farmers and female lecturers about foraging and the quality of foods and the quality of healing in association with the quality of food. So we have a lot of Ayurveda, a lot of yoga therapy. And so it started small in 2017 with the women didn't quite know what we were doing. So they continuously were sitting in the back of the tent. And Guruji would say, this festival is only for women, so come fully up to the front of the tent. And they really did not know how to behave because they had never been given an event that was specifically there was no men in the room. So they really didn't know what to do. And the first one started with a lot of dancing and a lot of I could watch them rewilding themselves without men in the room. You know, the veils came down and the dancing got a little wild, and they stayed up very late. There was no children to take care of. So they would stay in small clusters, and mothers and daughters would reunite after being separated for years. And it was just this big, cuddle puddle of Rajasthani and a few American and English women coming together saying, there's a lot of wisdom under the tent, but we have this language barrier. Next time, can we have something that would help us to access what it is that they have to offer? Because these women are strong and healthy. I know a woman who just died at 106 who has never sat in a chair. She only sits on the floor and can stand up and sit down without using her hands. Vibrantly healthy, never had any hormonal shifts, never had any cancer or migraines or nothing. She was the picture of health. And so having all these and then having the Western women coming in, they've got disease, they've got it in them or in their family, they're struggling with depression, with migraines, they're losing their hearing, they're losing their taste, they've got dry eye syndrome and all these things. And from this modern culture with modern medicine and advanced practices, and here we are in a tent full of women who live in huts, sweeping dirt floors, living with their sisters, and they're vibrantly healthy and happy from the minute they wake up until they go to bed. And so the Western women said, I want to know, how do I do that? So the next year we invited a better platform of lecturers and speakers, and then a few professional performers like dancers and musicians. And it got bigger and bigger. This year we're going into our 7th year. And so the medicine is really what they created. Again, I stood back a little bit. I just got a lot of women in there, and they created the medicine. The medicine turned out to be 2 things. The first thing is you have, 500 women under one tent from 7 continents, 7 countries, and give them a translator, and there's going to be magic just in the exchange. And so many lives have been changed just by this simple exchange of, how did you do that? Simple things like foraging and cooking, or simple things like collecting natural neem tree honey and making salves that cure wounds and rashes, or simple things, watching them raise their children. One of the observation was a man was there working in the kitchen. We put the men in the kitchen so the women could be out. And his son was with them, and his son was, I think, 3. And when all the women were done eating, they didn't have to clean up their dishes, they went to the conference while the men came out and cleaned the dishes up. And one man came out with his little toddler, 3 years old, and he's picking up plates and he's stacking the plates like this. And at one point he left a glass and a fork on the table, and he turned around to his 3-year-old and just made a gesture pointing to the glass and the fork. And this 3-year-old bent down and picked up the fork and picked up the spoon, these forks, the spoon and the cup, and toddled around behind his father and went to the washroom. And we all said, oh my gosh, this is a 3-year-old that father is teaching him and training him for purpose, for contribution, for community, not, children's work. You should be outside playing. Playing with who? Picking up cups and spoons is play. So slowly, and you watch them do this with each and every age as they go. It's not forcing them or telling them you have a chore. It's just join in with what mom and dad are doing, replicate them, mimic them, be joyful with them, like the work, do the work as perfect as you can, and then look for more work. And so we just that simple exposure, I could tell you 100 stories of the things these women have learned, but eventually the second medicine was we noticed a change of climate. And by that I mean when you live in nature the way these people do, you sleep under the trees in an open courtyard, or you walk to school through the dunes, but you're going to be more connected to Atman, to the collective consciousness, whatever you want to call it. Jung had his own word for it, but Christ mind, some people call it, or the quantum sphere that unites all human thought, is easily accessed when you're connected to nature and when you're in a tent with 600 women dancing to throbbing music. You don't call it groupthink because they're not going to be told to do something that they shouldn't do, but it's the wisdom that comes from being plugged into this quantum sphere, everybody at the same time. The climate smells like nectar. It is sweet, it's joyful, and anybody can walk in from any culture and have these women right up in their grill, smiling and hugging them and showing them how to dance and putting their clothes on them, inviting them over to their house for chai. And it changes. I came out of New York City to do this, I mean, I was protect myself, and then I've got women up in here all the time, and it was transformative for all of us. So that turns out that's the medicine. Later, we added the lectures with more formality. We invited university lecturers to come in and teach about farming practices that are, natural, and foragers to come in and teach them where to find food. The desert's full of food. People think that there's no food there, but it's everywhere. So we would go on foraging expeditions with them and pick desert lentils and cook them. So there's many layers of medicine, but many lives have been changed, not just mine, but everybody who participates, and they see the power, the feral, valid power of women in community it's remarkable.
I guess it's that subtle energy is we call it subtle, we call it inert. It doesn't mean anything, but it is the force that brings us all together, and you can feel it even if you're so disconnected from it, or if you're trying to follow everything with your logical, practical mind. It's so beautiful to witness. They say the longest journey of our lives is from our minds to our hearts. I think our culture tells us as women that we're in competition with each other, or we have this martyrdom. But if we come to the core of it, is that we are exactly the same as each other, and we're all going to experience the same thing. And as you say, not understanding the same language, but we can understand and feel this beautiful heart resonance in healing together, because we're all going to experience the same thing. Now, if we're living in the modern world, we have yoga apps, we have cycle syncing apps, we have every hack to connect us to ourselves, but we're more disconnected than ever. With your festivals, with this meeting of the feminine together, what would somebody that is so caught up in their mind and so caught up in their world of trying to get to where they're trying to get to, what would you first say to begin that invitation and inquiry to come to something like this that they might be actually very fearful of?
Well, I do tell people you don't have to move to the other side of the planet and become a yogi, live in an ashram, sleeping on the floor for 7 years the way I did it. That was my method. I believe in going to the source. When somebody says, I'm going to teach you yoga, your first question should be, what is the lineage? Where did it come from? The reason it's hard to find a guru now is because there are so many of them sort of fabricating themselves or anointing themselves, that the lineage of where this wisdom came from is broken. Just like ayahuasca, Native Americans will say the ayahuasca tradition is broken because the mescaline that is not communicating with each other anymore, because of the destruction of the land, the wisdom under the ground is in the plant itself is lost, and it's now being taught as sort of a self-medicating thing versus a wisdom, a pilgrimage, a journey. So there's two parts to answer this. Is you don't have to go to the other side of the planet. You can. One boy that came from Germany said, I would love to take this back to everybody that I teach. I can't bring them here. So how do I bring the ashram home? So we developed a yoga lifestyle workshop where people can come to the ashram for 21 days and go through a lifestyle training that doesn't make you into a yogi or a yoga teacher. It simply answers your question. We've got all these hacks. Why is it not working? Hacks are shortcuts. They were designed to keep you from the path. They're not designed to put you back on the path. The path has no IT or AI on it. There's only you and the creator on your mat. That's it. You're alone. And a lot of people don't like to hear that. They say, what about the Atman? Well, that's the door. The portal to connecting is your mat, your yoga mat, whether that's a patch of grass or a beach. It's just you and the creator. So when I teach people in the United States, now I'm here taking care of my father who was ill for some time. We lead them through 4 steps. They say, I belong to circles. I do these apps. I have this discipline chart and I have all these things, but it's not working. I'm getting worse and sicker every day. Why is that? Because there are steps missing from the process. The process always starts with sadhana. Sadhana can be translated as retreat, but when we hear retreat in the United States, we hear a bunch of girls in a circle on a beach. But sadhana was prescribed to the human race. Everybody in the human race needs to leave their life for 21 days every year alone. And in that sadhana, there's a process that they have to go through, a 3-step process that I help design for each person depending on their phase in life and what their goals are. But you have to do the sadhana, and you have to be alone. It's the only way that you're going to meet with the obstacles that you've created for yourself in your life, is to be alone, without comfort, without distraction of other people, and nobody to help. Nobody's going to help you. You just have to be there and be alone. So finding a cabin, or even you can do sadhana in your own home, but it's hard because the cats are there. But so sadhana is always, when someone says I have to change my life, sadhana is the first thing I say. 21-day sadhana, or and then you have a weekly, monthly, quarterly, and then you have your annual 21-day sadhana, and they're like, I can't get so many days off work. So there's the pace of life that they have to keep up with, the big house and the big car. It's a juggle. Do I get healthy and be natural, or do I keep building this empire that I've got started? So there's the conversation you encounter during sadhana. And then after sadhana, you come home and you're resolved. I have to get healthy, because sadhana was hard. I kept wanting a beer, or I kept wanting to call my sister. I have all these attachments. Getting healthy is not just getting fit and getting empty of obstacles. It's also getting healthy and breaking off with attachments that are going to prevent you from achieving your goals. And then you find a red tent, and that's a group of women that meet either online or in person. And I don't mean a women's circle that you're going to sit around and talk and share your miserable stories about how bad your life is. There's tons of those out there. I'm talking about a real red tent where you can go and be with women who are disciplined and getting fit and do their sadhana. And they have something real to offer as far as medicine for other people to do their same work. So this red tent, you find that. And then you have to, after that, you have to resolve to do your own work, stay on your own mat. And the world needs women to do their work. We're doing everybody else's work, this martyrdom thing you talk about. This story is 70 years old, where we're supposed to be in charge of everything, no career, no nothing, just serve, serve, serve. And it's giving us heart disease, to be honest with you. We're constantly focused either in a modern household on making sure everybody else meets their goals, but not us, Or in the yoga world, I meet a lot of women who are trying to escape by going up, 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 up. And all that gets them is psychosis. So,
Mm.
so that leads me to number 5, which is a refocusing on the part of our female existence and consciousness, which is not heart. It's the relationship between earth and water, which is heart and kidney, grounded. So start doing grounding things. It's a grounding yoga practice. It's a garden. It's a hike. It's a swim in the ocean. It's doing your grounding work and not so much focus on up or other people. So ourselves grounded, do your work. And that requires that you do the next part, which is find your work. What is your work? Your work is not my work. My work is not anybody else's work. Somebody says, I want to do what you did and go build something. Can you recommend an ashram? And I was like, I didn't get there by hook and by crook. My head didn't get me there. I got there because I surrendered. I got healthy. I did my sadhana. I got healthy and I started to receive and I just kept saying yes, yes. And then this is where the universe brought me. The universe is going to bring you somewhere else, but not until you do the steps, 1 through 5. Only after you have done these 6 things, sadhana, get yourself healthy, join a red tent, work your own mat, refocus on your actual center of energy and discover your own work, can you do the number 7, which is super important, which is to teach. And teaching children being the most benevolent thing that you can do. In India, teachers are one of the highest paying positions you can hold because they invest a lot in making sure their children are disciplined and healthy and contributing by the time they finish 12th class. Here in the United States, how much do we appreciate teachers and how much do we pay them? And then that reflects on the parents again. If the profession of teaching children isn't valuable, what are we doing in our home, sacrificing our earning years to teaching children? What's the benefit? Right? So we have a lot of people teaching children right now who should not be. They're teaching them habits that are not healthy. They're not teaching them a pathway of keeping themselves vibrantly, blissfully healthy the rest of their lives, contributing the rest of their lives, protecting their fertility. We don't have the best people teaching children today, in my opinion. But those are the 7 things that we teach people here, how to adjust their lives to get back on the right track. And notice nothing I said mentioned access more apps and more AI and facilitate building a data center next to your home. None of it is going to help any human at all. I'm not anti-technology. I'm just like, treat it as a tool. Don't let it take over your life. Spend most of your time with nature. There's a whole separate lesson here about what nature is. Right now we're teaching with Rajasthan Hatha Yoga Institute, we're teaching a course with Guruji on pranayama. And one of the things people are learning about is what is oxygen? What are your lungs? How are your lungs connected to your decision making, physiology? How does that happen? And these are things that people need to know early on so they develop excellent breathing habits early on. Right now, we're just trying to get people to stop breathing here and to breathe the way they did when they were infants. So imagine if we taught children to keep breathing the way they did as infants all the way through their lives versus, panic breathing. That's going to get the day done faster.
Question about this breath work. So everything gets packaged nicely, doesn't it? Everything has a nice PR agent, right? And it's like, the yoga, and then it's come to a physical exercise practice, and then breath work, which was pranayama, which is cut off. It's a nice packaged movement. Could you just talk about the difference between pranayama and breath work?
So prana means, like the traditional Chinese medicine teaches, it's the energy that animates you. Without prana, if the prana leaves the body dies because there's nothing to move the fluids and the thoughts and the fire around the body. So prana. Yama means managing that. Control. They say control, but which means, in the American mind, it means restraint. But control means control the movement of prana from the heart to the head, to the kidney, to the liver, to the feet. You are responsible for your own prana. This is the danger of radiation. If you have a Ring doorbell or if you have routers all over the house, it is disrupting your ability to manage your own energy. And eventually it will disrupt your endocrine system, eventually will disrupt the gray matter. So you have to be in an environment that's natural, radiation free, free of odors and pollution and all the things, so that you can get in contact with where your prana is, where it's located, where it's stuck, or where it's moving. Pranayama is a series of breathing exercises that you can learn in order to access control of the prana. Breath work, we call it breath work sometimes because I prescribe, breath work to my COPD patients. It's a simple series of breath exercises we use to stop the degradation of the alveoli, the thickening of the walls. We can use breath work to intervene and stop a headache. We can use it to intervene and stop ringing in the ears, tinnitus. So there are remedies that we can call breath work, and they're more prescriptive. But they come from this great body of Tantra Shastra. The original books of yoga were delivered to us in a quantity of books called the Tantra Shastra, the Tantra wisdom, Tantra meaning how life works, the quantum sphere, managing all of this. And pranayama are located in there. And from the Tantra came Buddhism, came Hinduism, and some people say Christianity, because Christ was educated here with the Siddha yogis of northern Rajasthan. He stayed there for 13 years and studied all this work. Pranayama, the control of your breath, and its association with control of the mind and decision making, is found in all religious texts, in all traditions all over the planet. So it's a very valid and important thing. Rajasthan Hatha Yoga Institute is a branch off of the ashram, and I'm the director therein. And then I bring teachers together online from all over the world, and we teach students basic fundamental care of yourself with techniques like movement, bandha, pranayama, meditation. All your students and your clients all are welcome to join. It's a donation-only program because the ashram is not for profit. My wellness center is not for profit.
That's incredible. I mean, where can people find your work? Because I think the essence of everything that we've spoken about is that you have the greatest technology on earth, but we've been completely disconnected of how to utilize it. And when we are stewards of nature and realize that we are the microcosm of the macrocosm, then we have the instructions to utilize ourselves.
The irony is that in India, it's called yoga sciences. And inside the yoga sciences, there's a collection of yogic technologies. The pranayama is a series of technologies that can be taught. Meditation is a technology. These are all original technologies. The atom bomb was taken straight from the Vedas instruction. Geometry, original math, the cosmos. It was all in the original books, and all of it has been taken to create these commoditized, smaller, very dangerous, human-made technologies. Radiation, what Elon Musk is putting around the planet is mimicking what the quantum sphere is and does. He just took that design and he made actual satellites and materials that can be commoditized and make cash for people. But the original technologies is free and it's available to everybody. And it is much more powerful than any satellite you can put in the sky. Just by learning the technologies and then consistently practicing them and turning on your own human satellite, which is your body, can override a whole lot of the stuff. The healthiest yogis in history were plagued by pollution of one kind or the next. And they knew that they had to be disciplined and fix the technologies and the body itself to be resilient of what was going to happen to it as they did their pilgrimages around India. So knowing that you have much more in the power of the human mind is millions of times bigger than anything being created by these multimillionaires. And it's sad because we're buying into it. All these apps and all of this stuff is weak. So weak. You can design your entire life just by learning the technology of your own satellite and then turning it on. You can change everything.
We've been hijacked and we think that we're smarter. We think we're outsmarting everything, but we're the product now.
Yes, we are. Yeah, if you want to be, you can be the product.
Otherwise, we can follow your practices. We can come and see you, Srijan. Where can everybody find you? What is your offering?
The festival, the next international festival is going to be 2027. It's always at the top of October, and it's at utsavamaa.org. The ashram is srijasnatasan.org. I'll give you all these links so that you can follow them. The Sri Devi Wellness Center that I opened there on campus is available to all the visitors. I now have a healing center in Southwest Michigan near where I care for my father at siddhawellness.com. And then Rajasthan Hatha Yoga Institute does not have a website yet, but all the classes are available just by writing to me. And when the website's up, you'll see the list of courses there. Very accessible. Guruji is a wonderful teacher. He speaks wonderful, charming English. I'll say charming.
Yeah. Very gentleman-like.
Very gentleman-like. He's not, doesn't have perfect English, but that's good. We're not going to change that. But he's a very wise and very good teacher. And he's nature-based. He's tantra-based. So there is no sniff of patriarchy. There's no concepts in his teaching about surrendering to, the social constructs that you're in. He's not a rebellion type person like I am. I'm a bit of a rebel. But the classes have so much technique to offer that you can learn something on a Saturday morning in pranayama class and plug it in the rest of the day and come back changed. So it's just 6 days later. It's not very theoretical. Nobody's trying to make people into, a great yogi or anything. We're just trying to give people techniques to keep themselves blissfully healthy and happy right now. There's a lot of stuff happening in the world that could change your morale. It could change the way that you work through the day. Maybe people are starting to feel a little heavier with disappointment. A little bit more fear is coming up for a lot of people, that ego brain of survival mode, which is very dangerous. Or even worse, frustration and resentment that is very destructive to the human body. So all of these things can be addressed with guidance. And as I said, from a real guru. Guruji was anointed as a saint at age 6. And has been in the tradition since then. He teaches people. Always be careful about who you're learning from. Find out what their background is and who taught them and what their purpose is in the world. Do your research before you follow any teacher. Always go to the source. Go back to the source. Start from there.
And the answer doesn't have to come straight away. I think it's the gratification. I want to do this. I'm going to do this.
Yeah.
Again, this technology has given you who it thinks it should be. But I think it's sit with it, sit with your nature, because we've gotten so uncomfortable with just sitting with ourselves, haven't we?
That pace of wanting it right now is actually what gave birth to all of these, what we call fake babas, these gurus who anoint themselves are there because people want something quick. Yeah.
And I guess one final question is what the future of health depends on what in your eyes?
So we are in a changing place right now, and that's why we're seeing so much upheaval in the world with the gender ideologies and just the wars and all of these things is because we are in a transitionary phase. And I want that to be good news for everybody because on the other side, it is going to be very different, but it will be split. There will be kind of us and them, unfortunately. So you do have to make a decision, but the future of healing is going to be sound and light and water. Our next course in Ayurveda is going to be all about the Siddha medicines, mysteries around using water as medicine, not just in naturopathy, hydrotherapy, but also infusions and using the cosmos to change water quality and hydrogen and things like that. So that's our next course is people are going to be looking in their own kitchen, in their own neighborhood, in their own gardens for authentic plant wisdom and solutions and a simpler diet and not buying things from other countries that have been shipped and packaged. And I think there's so many awake people now who understands what has been done to our food chain and they're opting out. Many of the companies are just closing. In my community alone, a lot of the women's salons who use only very invasive chemicals and scraping and, acids and things, they're all closing. I can name 10 women who said, I'm never going to color my hair again because I didn't realize that the colorant was transdermal. They said, Srijan, did you know that goes through the skin in your scalp and goes into your bloodstream? And I was like, yes. I've been saying that.
You hear it now?
Yeah.
I've been on my soapbox for so long.
Yeah, so for so many years they're coming back and it's starting to sink in that people are dying because of their personal choices and their need for speed and their need for owning it all and having it all. And you can't do it all and have it all. And women need to stop believing in this If we're going to solve heart disease in women, it's going to be because you protect your heart and stop giving everything away and getting into toxic situations. And you're going to start doing your own work with your heart, kidney, energy, because the world is waiting for you. There is nobody else that can do your work. Rabbi Tears of
Mm.
Firestone gave me that message. She works in Judaism and feminism intersection. She gave me a very good story when I met her at Kripalu 20 years ago, because she saw that I was just trying to do everybody's work, and I was exhausted, and I wasn't doing any of my own. She said, I had a dream once. I was getting on the subway in New York City, and I all of a sudden the doors opened and I walked in and the room was black. I was in this void, and there were marbles flying around and around my head, and they were going to hit me in the head, and I was ducking and the marbles were flying and they were bouncing off the walls. And she said all I could do was just like sit down so that they wouldn't get me. So she sat down and all of the marbles sat down. And it was one of those, what's it called, that game with the cups and the marbles sit in them. And she said, that's weird. So she stood back up and the balls went up again. So she tried to catch these glass marbles and sit them back down on the tray, but they wouldn't go. She would let go and they would fly back up, and they're running around and they're hitting her in the head. So she said, I give up. She sat down again and all the marbles sat down. And then she woke up.
Mm.
And she said, oh my gosh, I'm doing the work of all of these people, trying to get them to sit down in their chairs and do their own work. I'm doing Save the Whales. I'm doing Save the Children. I'm doing Save the Local Garden. I'm doing Save my husband's business. I'm doing Save my children's college. She said, but who is doing my work? It's only when you sit
Mm.
down in your place and do your work does everybody else get to do their work, for a variety of reasons, not just quantum, but because they're also watching mom do her work.
And I think it goes, there's no competition, is there? There's no competition in nature.
There's only competition among women if you haven't found your work. If
Mm.
you haven't found your work, you're likely to look around and try to do somebody else's work. And it's never going
Mm.
to work. It's just going to make you sick and crazy. Marbles hitting
Mm.
your head. So, yeah.
Well, Srijan, it's a pleasure. I mean, gosh, I could speak and hear to you for hours, but I will certainly be tuning into your lessons and hearing the wisdom of your guru. Do you have any final shares of wisdom that we haven't? I know we haven't spoken about so many different things, but
Yeah. And next time it can be more pragmatic. Like, what do you do with, like, everyone comes from the ashram and they're like, oh my gosh, this is great, but I'm going home. What do I do? So if I want to just say that when people age, as we age and we get into the late third, fourth phases, they're always surprised when I say you have to invest more time in your health and sanity as you age, because you have a lot more vulnerability. You have emptier tissues, emptier situations. So you have this opportunity for a lot of stuff to crawl in there and make up a home. And it takes more time to keep your tissues toned and your bones strong as you age. So my grandfather retired at 61, sat down in his rocking chair because he had earned the right to stop working, and he died within 3 years. So
mm,
younger children, they run around, they play. The maiden phase, she's, getting ready. She's bleeding. She's all plugged into nature. She's dancing. Mother phase, now the health thing starts to rise because she's sitting with babies and she's less mobile and she's got more stress coming. And then the queen phase, now the stress is really there. So the one thing I want everybody to understand is that depending on your age, you have a large block of your day should be set aside for food sourcing, food preparation, eating properly, exercise, breathing, being in the nature, exposing yourself to the beach and the sun and the waves, a daily, monthly, quarterly, annually sadhana. This is a huge amount of investment that you have to make in your health. As you age, when you get to fourth quarter, you're talking 4 to 6 hours. So
mm,
in my phase, 3, 4 hours a day is spent in study and breathing and asana. And this is nature. The human body was meant to work about 4 hours a day, 6 hours a day at top speed. The rest of the time was, in nature, the body is meant for resting, playing, exercising, being with family, cuddle puddles. And, so
mm,
really look at your day and understand how far away you have come from the natural signatures of each part of the day. and how much of the day you are now giving to the system that has been put on you. And therein, at that intersection, you will find the degradation of your health.
And then I guess you might have a younger version of you from New York saying, what the heck?
Yes, yes.
2, 3, 4 hours? Are you kidding me?
Are
So,
you kidding? Yeah.
what do you say to those women?
Well, it starts, if they're in a partnership, it starts with an agreement with the people in the house that says, I'm now quitting as the martyr. I'm not responsible
Mm,
for everyone's decision. Everyone has to be trained to take care of themselves, their things, and the outcomes of their decisions. Mom is consultant when those kids get up and they're getting ready to leave. She's consultant. She's not fixing all the problems. So,
mm,
an evening conversation with the husband and the family is absolutely important because her wisdom is needed. But she should not be running a household and other people's lives 24/7. It will destroy them. They will not be able to be adults, and it will destroy her. So it starts with an agreement inside the home that we're going to be doing something different. Everybody's goals will be met. Everybody's mission in life will be established, and we will support each other. Everybody will support each other, including the mom. And that will change
mm,
things a great deal.
mm. And that takes courage. And I guess the first thing that most parents will say is, I feel guilty.
Yep. And the guilt comes from because this story that was given to us that mom is in charge of everything, including all the things that go wrong. This was a story. It was invented by manufacturers of products and the lifestyle, the American way, which bled over into Europe and now it's bleeding over into India. This was a story that was concocted by a bunch of, I'm sorry, ad men in New York City sitting around saying, how do we control the buying in the home? If the wife is spending the money, then we need to control her behavior. Let's give her a story that's both glamorous, makes her feel in charge, but only of a small brownie, not her life, but just the house. And they sold it big and it was appealing. And it's not patriarchy that's giving us this story anymore. We're feeding it to ourselves. Indian
Mm,
mothers are feeding it to their daughters that you have to do this arranged marriage, this betrothal when you're 7 to be sure that you have a husband when you're 21. This is fear-based decision making that alters people's lives forever. There's this concept in India with many people that we consult with who are sick. Their parents said, I could be an engineer or I could be a doctor. That was it. My 2 brothers are engineers and they're successful. But, the youngest brother was brought in and he was drugged. They had drugged him because he wasn't being a
mm,
good engineer. He could hardly walk. He
mm,
was, having terrible seizures from the drug interactions. And we made the family wait outside. And this little boy, this not little boy, he was, a college student. He was shoving something in his pocket so hard that he ripped the pocket off the shirt. And I said to Guruji, ask him what's in the pocket. I think that we're going to find out what's going on. If you could just have him give that to us. And we asked, and he gave us this little notepad and a pencil. And we opened it, and there was botanical pictures, pictures of birds. There was poetry, lyrics, music. He is an engineer.
mm,
The highest calling of engineer. He was an artist with skills
mm.
well above his brothers.
Yeah.
And so we had to call the family in and say, you do have 3 engineer sons. One is, county, roads, one is building, and this one is going to design art.
Mm.
And it was a hard pill to swallow. So finding your own work and making that decision and making that commitment and allowing our children to express what their work is and not trying to put them in a box. That rule applies to us as adults too. Just try to get out of the box that was drawn for you by a group of men that you never met and don't care about. You know, you can design a future. This next world is a future that's designed for health and for nature and for children and for fertility.
We are the future bearers that need to courageously lead from our hearts in that sphere. Yeah.
Yeah, from our heart kidney section. Now, this is going to be
Heart, kidney.
but starting with just that, if you can just sit down and know that you're not responsible from your heart to heal the entire family and community and let that myth go and then start with what you've got. Start by doing your own sadhana. Leave the family to find your own, even if it's a closet in your house that is your space for practicing pranayama and meditation. Make a space that is only yours. It is protected. It's sacred. It has rituals if you want involved, whether that's a candle or mantra, whatever. Do it, your prayer. You do what is necessary to protect that one place, and plant yourself there and grow from there. When I first became this, I just had a little corner in my bedroom with a small table with, my books and journal and things like that. And I told the kids, they were still in junior high at that point, and I said to them, when mom's, door is closed and locked, it's because she's doing her 20-minute meditation. And you just have to give her that time. She'll always come out.
Mm.
you know, and they did. And now I have three strong kids who also meditate. They're all healthy. They all spend time in nature. They all have their heads, on real tight about what relationship is, and that it is going to have to be, give and take. And it's been a travel for them to try to find another important person in their life that is willing to support both their own mission and their partners. So this is it's going to be an adjustment. We have changed our generational success from one to the next, and both male and female. We have really messed it up, but you do have to have courage now and start to make changes, not all at once, but small. Make it small so the family doesn't get too upset.
Yeah. Small changes and be the
Small
lighthouse.
changes. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Srijan. Thank you so
You're
much
so
for your
welcome.
time. That was such a pleasure. I can't wait to join your community and hopefully see you at the festival in October next year.
Yeah. Oh, I would love it if you could come and speak at the festival. The women would love to hear more about your work.
Oh, wow, that would be a deep honor.